versus have we evaluated the person? So I thought maybe first you could maybe talk a little bit about what is mental illness in general versus, let's say, a personality disorder and that kind of thing.
Okay. So I would, because you're the physician, I'd like you to talk about the physiological foundation to true mental illness, like schizophrenia, bipolar, and that kind of thing. But basically, when you're talking about a mental illness or you're talking about a psychiatric disorder, you kind of have a choice. This is really general, but you kind of have a choice between, are we really looking at a real physiological response? And in that case, if there's something organic that's happening within the brain and the body that is prompting a severe, an unusual behavior change or an altered mental status, that kind of thing. The second choice is that it's really more of a personality disorder. Personality disorder is just long-standing pattern of behavior that is not likely to change without a whole lot of hard work, really. And for personality disorders to actually, we all have personality. We all have these, we have different models of personality. One is the Big Five model of personality. One is the 16 PF. But basically we all have these descriptors, these factors that to describe what we are. Like, are you high in agreeableness? Do you try to get along with others? Or are you very low in agreeableness? Are you high in neuroticism? How are you in terms of extroversion? Got a lot of extroversion or a little bit of extroversion? And then the fifth factor is conscientiousness, which is, you take care of your responsibilities and you stay organized and take care of things. And so our personality can be any constellation of those five factors. So we all have some neuroticism. We can all be on the narcissistic side. But in order to actually classify that for it to meet the level of disorder, a narcissistic personality disorder or an antisocial personality disorder, the symptoms the behaviors that you're exhibiting have to be enough that they're interfering with your effective functioning in two or more domains. So
two or
more. Yeah. So there's a little bit lax on that, but really from my old training, we were looking for disruption in two domains. So is it vocational and personal? You had some choice, you had some leeway there. But it does have to be it can't just be that you're annoying because you have a lot of narcissism. It has to really interfere with some level of functioning for it to rise to that level of disorder. Symptoms have to be apparent by a specific age. It has to, there's a lot of rule outs and things like that. But for this discussion in the true crime community, we're generally always at odds with each other about, is this psychopathy or is this sociopathy? And they're actually two different things, even though they sound similar. But they're both housed under this umbrella of antisocial personality disorder. And if you were to look at the DSM-5 and you looked up the diagnostic criteria for antisocial personality disorder, you would see some of the characteristics for both psychopathy as well as sociopathy. And so it would be things like lying, using aliases, not owning your own identity, but using aliases in the commission of a crime, conning other people for profit, or intentionally setting somebody up and then finding pleasure out of it just because you like to see someone get hurt. Now that leads us to the discrimination between, are you talking about sociopathy or are you talking about psychopathy? Or
do you see my infograph? I don't know if it's up there.
I'm not looking at that. Sorry. Oh, okay. So in general,
I don't know if that's a helpful infographic.
Yeah, no, that's it. That is. And so for sociopathy, sociopathy would be that person that would actually do something hurtful and then get joy or pleasure from hurting someone. Mm-hmm. So this is where you see sadistic, sadism and masochism and the philias and that kind of thing. Psychopathy is actually more of like a brain-based problem, they believe. The new contemporary research is really conceptualizing it as a neurological dysfunction. Yeah. And it's basically the limbic system is not providing corrective emotion. And so people can do things and they don't seem to be affected by guilt or sadness or shame. So they're capable of doing things that are fairly horrible or in general just socially unacceptable behavior. And they don't ever change, because why would they? They very often have a high level of Machiavellianism where they believe that other people are there to support them in getting their needs met. And so if you hurt somebody on your way to your goal attainment, that was their reason for being here, was to help you, the psychopath.
Right. So people that are sort of collaterally hurt are just seen as stepping stones to that person's goal, is kind of what you're saying.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So lacks empathy and guilt. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Higher job success, maybe sociopaths, environmentally influenced, feel empathy and guilt. They have erratic behavior, struggles to find and keep jobs. Psychopaths too can be quite impulsive. There's
overlap.
Pardon?
I said there is overlap.
Yes. So psychopaths too can be very impulsive because you have to think about they're being primarily driven by basic instincts and needs. They think about something they want and then they just get it. And they don't get lost in all of the worry about, well, is this fair? Am I going to hurt somebody's feelings? Am I going to take somebody else's job? They don't think about it. And so one of the reasons why people find it hard to distinguish between psychopathy and sociopathy under that umbrella of antisocial personality disorder is because they're both are mercenary, right? Mm-hmm. That they're willing to use other people to get the things that they desire. So.
There's a question that I want to put up on the screen. On the screen, if you might go there, from Thomas.
Okay, so talk about it in what way?
Well, I'm wondering if Thomas is questioning, and I think that as you said, the contemporary literature, the studies are beginning to show that psychopathy. I mean, both are antisocial personality, right, disorder. Psychopathy and psychopathy, but there's more of a genetic basis for psychopathy, that there is a belief now that people are born, frankly, as a psychopath.
It can be primary, as in that there's a causative agent or event, or it can be, I'm sorry, I said that backwards. It can be something that they're born with, or there could be a causative event. There could be a brain injury, something like that.
But I think with psychopathy, there is a genetic basis the more we're studying this. But as you said earlier, there is a neurophysiologic foundation with psychopathy. However, I think, tell me if I'm wrong, or you agree or disagree, that just because somebody is a psychopath, for instance, does not mean that they're going to become a serial killer.
No way. No.
There are a lot of people out there that are psychopaths.
Yes.
Or I don't even want to name names, but famous people can be psychopaths, and they're utterly charming, and they get what they get, and they don't get upset.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they're not killing people, right?
That's right.
What are your thoughts on that?
That is where the dark triad research came from. Is this study of antisocial versus psychopathy in people that are really successful, like your high-level politicians and such, or Fortune 500 CEOs. And that's where they broke down this graphic that you've got with the bad boy in the middle, and you've got narcissism, Machiavellianism, and
this one.
I don't see anything.
Okay, I put that up just now. Do you see it?
I don't. Let me look, see what's going on here. Okay, so this was developed to discuss these people who are not killers, they're not serial killers, but they are fairly mercenary in like climbing the ladder of fortune and fame, and not being too concerned about who they hurt. You know, it's all worth it if it's for them and whatever their particular goal happens to be. The difference between the psychopath, though, who's kind of climbing that ladder to fortune and fame, there just isn't that same level of joy or excitement or feelings of victory that you get like when it's somebody who's antisocial, where there's sociopathy. There's something else going on there. It's a quest for fame or it's a quest for money. But your psychopath, it could just be they really like the work they do, and that's what's motivating them 100%. And that if it's something that they think they should do, then they'll do it with no regard to hurting someone, as opposed to sociopathy, where someone is, you know, I can't wait to get rich so I can stick it to them and, you know, make them get vengeance for the things that they did to hurt me. So, so the psychopath, somebody who we actually say someone who scores high in psychopathy, they're very functional, right? The things that drive them are things that they view as survival. In some ways, you could look at Scrooge as the ultimate psychopath.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he wasn't technically, because earlier he had some relationships and felt love and all that. But toward the end, for him, he worked hard. He saved every dime, but there was no joy. Like none of it was done for any reason other than it's just what I do and I'll keep doing it. So it kind of gives you that idea.
Very nuanced in a way.
It is nuanced, except you with the psychopathy, you cannot forget that their brain, their limbic system is actually different than mine and yours. They're really not wired for positive, it really any type of real positive emotion.
With the psychopath.
With people that score high in psychopathy.
Mm-hmm.
So when you ask that question about the face of evil, I tend more to look at sociopathy. Those people scare me a bit more because they're having fun if they're hurting you. Like they like it, right? So that, to me, that's kind of your stereotypical monster in Hollywood, right? But with psychopathy, asking about the face of evil, is there such a thing? Initially you'd say, of course, no. Your bone structure shouldn't really have any influence on your actual appearance. However, there are two features that are connected to people that score high in psychopathy that can certainly give you a level of discomfort when you're around them. And
do you have that graphic? I'm sorry to interrupt you. I know you showed it on your live recently, but
the what?
On your recent live, you had some graphics to talk about some of the stigmata. I call them stigmata, facial stigmata of the psychopath. Do you happen to have?
No, I didn't do those because I didn't know that we were going to go really that far in depth.
Sorry.
But no, that's okay. But just that kind of, what are the two features that can really affect how the person high in psychopathy their physical appearance, what can it do? if you want to, let me show you, Amy. Let me pull up. I don't want to lose that graphic. Hold on. Let me pull up this one graphic, and then you can share it. And that'll give you something new to do. Learn.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I think I deleted it. And why don't you talk about the medications related to the whole visual snow thing?
Oh, yes. Well, we talked, I'll just sort of introduce the idea here. I don't know even if folks have followed some of the recent news and or Jules' channel, and I think also Nerdy Addict did a very rather deep dive on the whole concept of, in this case, Bryan Kohberger and his history from probably from high school, mid-high school, of having what we call ocular migraines or eye migraines. And then sort of a part or a subtype of ocular migraines can be something called visual snow, which is, and I may even have, I don't know how to get it up. I don't know if my daughter actually put it. Let me just see if she did the visual snow. Well, these are some graphics of where the visual snow happens. I don't think here. What and there's something called visual snow, and then I'll explain that in a minute. But then even more chronic is something called visual snow syndrome. And I'm going to put some links to some organizations and some articles that folks can look back to. At the end of this live, I'll go and put it in my comment section or the posting section, the about description section. But visual snow is a phenomenon that is not well understood. It is rather rare. It's maybe 1% to 2% of the population, and it's considered to be something pathological that occurs in the visual area of the brain, which I have some graphics for folks as well. But what it causes, if everybody wants to look at this graphic that I put up, is normal sight is what you and I might see, and then sight with visual snow looks kind of quite granular. You had something?
No, I just deleted something that I wanted.
Oh,
sorry.
No.
Go ahead. It's okay. Go ahead.
No, and so I don't know where we're going with the visual snow and the visual snow syndrome, except that we do not know what causes this syndrome, and or sometimes it's just a passing phenomenon where a person's vision, and it's not like having just intermittent floaters in your eyesight, but it takes the entire visual field and it looks granular, grainy, and somewhat snow-like. And in some, and it has been well sort of unpacked and verified as to best they can, but on the channel called Nerdy Addict, he's a very sophisticated IT guy, as is his partner Sleuthy girl. And they were able to go back and find what they believe really is a verified internet postings of Bryan Kohberger back when he was 15, 16, 17, talking about his experience with something called visual snow and how this was really debilitating for him, that he was being treated as if it's having ocular migraine type of thing. And he was feeling, and if you follow some of his postings, he was feeling extremely despondent about these symptoms. Again, we don't know what triggers it. And it isn't just the granular snow, but there are 4 or 5 other effects that happen in your visual system that can occur if you actually have the syndrome. And, if you look on the internet, even amongst the scholarly articles, even in 2022, well, just speaking 2023, nothing's really come out yet, But, the jury really is still out. What causes this visual snow? Can illicit drug use cause this? Is visual snow akin to, or is it a separate phenomenon from what they call post-hallucinogenic or illicit drugs in the hallucinogen class of drugs syndrome, which people who abuse certain types of street drugs actually can get something akin to visual snow. Some thoughts are that visual snow can be triggered by use, and it could just be on a one-time basis. Some of the literature say that actually Zoloft and the serotonin uptake inhibitors, some of the stimulant meds that we use for attention deficit disorder, there are case reports where those classes of meds are thought to trigger visual snow syndrome. But go ahead.
Did you read the articles that were talking about the ecstasy and MDMA influence?
Yes.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
No, I think I sent you some, and I don't know if you had others, but that there is the MDMA, the ecstasy, amongst other illicit drugs, act obviously on the brain. The visual cortex, really the primary and secondary visual cortex is in the back of the brain, generally, like whereas marijuana, for instance, and we even know has long-term and short-term effects, but that's generally on the frontal lobe. And heroin, which we think we know that Bryan Kohberger had an addiction to, definitely we know that can cause changes in the frontal cortex, which have to do with disinhibition of your behaviors, a poor filter of your behaviors, impulse control. Those kind of things can be affected, usually reversible, by chronic and or short-term use of heroin or cannabinoids or marijuana. It's less understood what the effect of marijuana, heroin, and the MDMA and the other, what was the other one that you said?
Ecstasy was statistically significantly more likely to result in the first appearance of the visual snow than the other drugs.
Yes. So the question then begs, and that Gemma has this question up here, which we'll talk about in a minute. But in Bryan's, it was almost like a blog in a way, right? You talk to that a bit, but there seemed to be an association, and I don't blame people if they're having visual problems like this. Poor night vision is associated with visual snow syndrome, photophobia, which is very high sensitivity to sunlight or even ambient light or any kind of light. So it can very much impact on a person. And I can imagine if you're a teenager and let's say he's 28 now, this is when he was 15, 13 years ago, I don't think this was well understood. We don't even understand it now, let alone 13 years ago very well. I can imagine it could be very isolating. It could be frightening. And Gemma McDonald asks here, would that cause symptoms of suicidal ideation, poor self-worth, depersonalization? Yes, I could imagine, because it's frightening, especially if you're an adolescent.
Yeah.
And you need to get not only neurologic help, but psychological help for this.
Right. So diagnostically, this only affects 2.2% of the population, and they have to have the symptoms for 3 months, and there has to be multiple visual disruption. It can be palinopsia, where you like when you look in a certain direction, the timing on your eyesight is off, and so you get like this trail of the object. Mm-hmm. So that's palinopsia. Also floaters, photopsia. You talked about, I think I heard you say
photophobia. This very sensitivity to light.
Yep.
And the not night blindness, but almost very poor night vision.
Yeah. Nyctalopia, I think. Nyctalopia. but the person is not really going to get that diagnosis unless they have multiple disruption, phenomenon. So you can imagine. So I don't know, will it let me share, or I can put a website, it will let me share.
Okay. So I think the way you do, because the other night when Tyler was on with you, he somehow was able to pop in his infograph right into the studio, and then I put it up. It was very mysterious to me.
I think I see it. Hold on.
Maybe under share or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a graphic that shows the different types of visual phenomenon that you can experience if you're having visual snow or visual snow syndrome. Did you just
put that up, or did I have to click?
I put it up. I think you have to click it to make it go there. Okay, it should be up there now. Can y'all see the yellow turtle crossing sign?
Okay. Yes. Wonderful.
Okay. So again, just to kind of develop an appreciation for how uncomfortable this condition actually is, you can have visual snow, which is one of these images that they've shown you, or in order to get diagnosed with the visual snow syndrome, then you have to have 3 of these phenomenon. So the first picture that you see, that's normal vision. That's A, is normal vision. The B is an example of just kind of basic visual snow, like by itself. But when you get down to C, that is palinopsia.
Okay, we can't see that. I'm sorry. You must have scrolled down, or did I do that? I don't know. I just see words right now.
Oh, okay. I went down the wrong one. Here we go. There you go. I thought I gave you a regular
infograph.
Yeah. Okay. So palinopsia is down on C, and that's where you kind of get that staggered visual, right? The timing is off on your visual ocular memory. And so you keep the memory too long. And so it gives you that staggered kind of floating. But then if you, the D is the photo orbs and that kind of thing. But then to get actual visual snow diagnosis syndrome, that's at top right-hand picture that is so much disruption happening in the field of vision.
Like simultaneously.
At the same time. And in order for it to be visual snow syndrome, it's the full field of vision.
That's right.
Now, there are some people that will have like a partial field of vision, but they don't typically get the full 3 or more phenomenon. But if you're diagnosed with visual snow syndrome, it's very powerful.
Mm-hmm. And we don't really know. I don't anyway. I guess I didn't read deeply enough into Bryan Kohberger's descriptives on his posting. But did you read what he described at all?
Yeah. So he claims in his writings that he's experiencing all of the symptoms. Mm-hmm. Okay. So he says that, and he does talk with some passive suicidal ideation, that life's not worth living, that the constant onslaught of visual stimulation has resulted in him feeling desensitized, that sensory-wise he doesn't feel connected. Having a feeling of derealization or depersonalization is an additional diagnostic that can go along with this visual snow phenomenon. So we don't know Bryan. We hadn't had the opportunity to question him and explore his background and history. But when you go through and you read these postings that he left, mm-hmm. He clearly was experiencing a great deal of frustration and resentment about not having anything. He even was saying goodbye to his house. As if it were, a person. I mean, we are personally connected to our homes, but So, part of me wonders when I go through and I read these postings, part of me wonders, are we in fact really seeing him write about the impact of this, what could legitimately be a really severe condition? Is he just exhausted from it? Is he just worn out? Or was he demonstrating some kind of, maybe some sort of conversion problem, being lonely, not really having a friend group, an identity, and he was expressing those needs, or the fact that they're not being, that he's being stunted in terms of his developmental trajectory. Is he expressing that more as having like a medical issue? It would be very interesting to know now if he continues to have this, because it doesn't really go away. At least that's what the literature looks like to me.
Right. And I think I just wanted to, Janet has just asked a question. How would somebody be legally able to drive? Honestly, they're for sure for nighttime, not. And,
Right.
They're really not supposed to be driving if you have this. Can you imagine? I wanted you to go back to C there on your infograph, where you see a trail, because there's a lag in what you see versus what your brain is, able to remember or does remember, and there's a slowness. How could you make good judgment vis-a-vis driving and stopping,
Right.
etc.? So you're not supposed to, and this is why it. I think we need more elucidation on, was this a real thing? Because if it were a real thing for him, then you're fast forwarding to age 28. The person is driving 2,000 miles across the country. How could this person have been able to get as far as they got if it's that incapacitating?
And can you imagine, with all of the reading, all of the typing, how would he do that? How would he accomplish that if he's having this much obstruction visually? I just can't imagine being in a graduate class and doing that work without being able to see.
I agree. And I think that's why we were saying earlier in our chat that you and I don't have enough information. And honestly, I don't think anybody does at this point, including the defense or the state, because he needs and he merits, he deserves a full battery of psychological, psychiatric, and neuropsychiatric testing, and maybe even imaging the brain, etc.